Alright, guys, I wanted to just share a little knowledge about sound design in general, and also give you some knowledge about how to create some specific patches that will give you some fat bass sounds, some nasty bass sounds, and some all around great patches for tunes like dubstep or glitch hop or pretty much any electro style music. So what I have right here is my template Ableton set. So I can come in here and I'm going to show you guys a little bit of how to use Operator to get some great bass sounds. I mean, it really, for being a pretty simple synthesizer and just it comes with Ableton, it's a very, very good, powerful synthesizer. It has a lot of capabilities. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a little bit of how to work with this. As you see, our A oscillator down here is set to a sine wave, which is fine for now. We can leave that, and also oscillator B, we can leave them both as sine waves, and here's what that sounds like. You're not going to be able to hear it unless you have a subwoofer, headphones with good drivers, but we can. This is what a sound wave or a sine wave sounds like in the higher frequencies. But essentially that's going to be the sub-bass wave. But as we start to bring in the level of oscillator B, listen to what happens to the sound. So we get a little bit more grit in there. And so now what we can do is you want to draw in just a little bit of harmonic content toward the top here. It gives a little bit more grit. You can hear that difference now. So now we're gonna actually what we're gonna do before we throw some effects on there is we highlight the synthesizer and then you do Command G, or on a PC it is Control G, and that groups it as an instrument rack. So then we're able to utilize macro controls. And now we grab a saturator. Actually, we're going to use the preset of a bit warmer. Drop it in right behind here. Okay, so I'm liking that. Sounds pretty good. And now we can start to bring in oscillator C to see how that morphs the sound. Oh, and one thing I would like to point out, if you're using bass sounds, or if you're trying to do just monophonic textures, you need to click this whole section over here, down where you can select all the different oscillator routings, and you click on the amount of voices and you bring it down to 1. And then you can also go on the pitch envelope section and you turn on the glide and bring it up to right around 90 milliseconds or so, and that'll give it this sort of sound. And this is what it sounds like if it's longer. So you can play around with that, get different kind of effects that you want, but I like to keep it right around 90 to 100 milliseconds. I feel like that is a good kind of range to be able to really get those bending fast notes, but you are also able to not have it extend out too far. So that's what that sounds like. we're going to come into oscillator C, and we're going to play around with the waveforms a little bit, see what else we can get out of this third oscillator. Now let's try and bring in D on top of that. Let's see how that's. As you notice, we're getting a lot of harmonic content, which might not be exactly preferable. So if you'd like to bring back the other oscillators and just kind of work with the first two and use kind of more of a processing approach, like we can throw in an EQ8 after the saturator so that we're EQing the saturated signal. Cut out the low end. Now we can play around with getting some extra high end and just kind of play around with how that sounds. Okay, so I'm liking that. Now let's bring in the amp. This is a great plugin from Ableton. They brought it in with one of their updates for Live 8 Suite, and it emulates the cabinets from amps for guitars, so it can give you some really good distortion and effects kind of in that range. So let's see what we can get here. We'll bring the dry wet down a little bit. Okay, so just for this video, we're going to leave that how it is, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit of how the macro controls work, because you can get a lot of expressive type sounds and really kind of get a lot more than you could just with the sound by itself. So what we're going to do is go on map mode, and click this button right here, and then you can macro, actually we'll start with B because A controls the volume at this point, and you can macro, we'll start on 4, you macro the oscillator levels. We'll do both B and C, both to macro 4, and now as you see up here we have our macro mapping ranges, and if you bring these up a little bit and bring these down, then that keeps it from going all the way down to 0 and all the way up to, or all the way down from the bottom to all the way up to the top. It kind of gives you a smaller range so that it doesn't have as drastic of an effect. But let's see what that playing around with that macro sounds like. And that is a little bit of knowledge on how Operator as a synthesizer works. And if you would like to get the wobble bass, as many dubstep producers are very fond of, I mean, it's good in certain situations, but in others I like to shy away from it. But if you would like to do that with Operator, what you need to do is you turn on the LFO, and instead of having the destinations go to the oscillators, you want it to go to the filter and have the filter turned on as well. So let's hear what that sounds like. The LFO amount a little bit here. There's all different kinds of LFO types of waves. So you can do the sawdown. That's a pretty common one, and you can bring it to sync, so then it syncs. It syncs right along with whatever you're trying to get, eighth notes, quarter notes, 16th notes, whatever. And playing around with the filter frequency and the resonance and the amount of LFO and even the spread, which I definitely like a lot because it brings it into the stereo field. We'll get rid of that LFO. You can hear that's straight up the stereo field. Now if you spread it out a little bit, so it almost gives it a type of chorus type feel. Another great ability of Operator is to use the pitch envelope, which this is when it's usually used best in layers, like layering the different instruments together, doing multiple operators, synthesizers, or whatever other synthesizers you see fit, and kind of bringing the top end and the bottom end in, and using the pitch envelope for a specific sound, or for a specific frequency range that you want, rather. So this is going to be probably pretty drastic, but bear with me. This is just kind of to give you an idea of how it works. So the longer the attack is, the longer it takes for the envelope to go from the bass note all the way up to wherever or however high the pitch envelope is set to, which is all the way up in this case. And then it drops back down, which is what you hear. You hear it. So that can be very useful in creating expressive textures, and even just to kind of give it that punch that you would like to hear at the beginning of this patch, but not really toward the end of it. So, I mean, there's just countless things and countless possibilities, especially once you start combining different synthesizers inside of one instrument rack. It can absolutely give you all the sounds you want. I mean, it takes a little bit to get to know it, but once you get to know it and you understand how it functions, it is actually a very powerful synthesizer. People think that you need massive and you need all these extra add-ons, but really, Operator and analog, when they're learned correctly and the knowledge is there, they are very, very powerful synthesizers, especially with the processing and everything else that comes into play afterward. So that's just a little bit of Operator sound design, and yeah, that's the end of this video. Keep tuned for more. I will be putting them out as fast as I can and trying to give everybody the bit of knowledge that they're seeking. Thanks, guys.